Some stories sound fake because they're too clean, too cinematic, too perfectly timed. This one is not like that. In April 2004, a 32-year-old British man named Ashley Revell did something that most people only joke about after a few drinks. He sold almost everything he owned and walked into a Las Vegas casino with one purpose: to put his entire financial life on a single roulette spin. Not a big bet, not a risky night, not a wild weekend. One spin. And the detail that makes the whole thing feel like a myth is also the simplest in the world. He put it all on red. Now, before we romanticize, let's get the facts straight. Revell's stake was $135,000, reported widely at the time, and he placed it at the Plaza Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas on Sunday, April 11, 2004. He wasn't a high roller with a safety net. He wasn't hedging his risk. Some quiet trust fund didn't back him. According to the reporting, he had liquidated his possessions to fund what he openly described as a leap of faith. And a film crew was there to capture it all. That phrase, leap of faith, is the first clue to the psychology of the whole thing. Because roulette isn't a strategy, roulette is surrender. It's the purest collision of hope and probability. There's no skill to hide behind, no system to claim credit for, no "I outsmarted the market." Just you, the wheel, and the outcome. And Revell didn't walk in wearing the uniform of a reckless man. He walked in wearing a rented tuxedo, cash in hand, making the moment look like an event because it was. Even the casino's own people understood the theater of it all. The Plaza's representatives later described him arriving with the cash, switching it for chips, and doing some low-stakes gambling as a warm-up before the primary wager. A warm-up. Think about that. Imagine your entire financial identity stacked into chips, and you decide to warm up. That's not normal behavior, but it is revealing behavior. It tells you this wasn't just desperation. This was a man trying to master fear by walking straight into it. And here's another human detail that makes the story land. His mother and father were there watching. So this wasn't some anonymous casino legend who wandered in at 2 a.m. in a smoky room. It was public, recorded, and emotionally loaded. Family, cameras, onlookers, the whole thing. The crowd watched as the wheel spun, and in the moment right before he committed, something interesting happened. He reportedly chose red at the last minute. ABC News reported that he said he made that choice at the last moment, and that he'd heard that most people following the stunt wanted him to bet on red. Now pause there, because that tiny detail is where the legacy code lesson begins. A man makes the biggest bet of his life, and at the final second, he lets the crowd decide the color. Why? Was it superstition? Was it a need to feel supported? Was it a way to spread responsibility if it went wrong so that the loss wouldn't feel entirely personal? Or was it something else, something darker and more honest? Maybe he wanted to feel as if the universe was speaking through people. Because when you're about to jump off a cliff, you'll grab onto almost anything that makes the fall feel destined. That's what makes this story so powerful. It's not about gambling. It's about the moment a human being stands on the edge of certainty and says, "I'd rather feel everything than feel nothing." And that is precisely where we'll pick up in the next section, the spin itself, the seconds where time slows down, and what actually happened when the ball dropped. Casinos are designed to make time disappear. No clocks, no windows, no sense of morning or night, just light, noise, movement, and the subtle suggestion that this moment matters more than the last one. But when Ashley Revell stepped up to the roulette table at the Plaza that day, time didn't disappear. It slowed. According to eyewitness accounts and later interviews, the atmosphere around the table shifted the moment the dealer stacked the chips. This wasn't casual gambling energy. This was something else. A crowd gathered, the cameras rolled, even people who had no idea who Revell was could feel that this spin carried weight. Because this wasn't just money anymore, this was identity. The chips represented years of work, every decision he'd ever made, every sensible choice, every risk he hadn't taken. His past and his imagined future compressed into a small, neat pile of plastic. And then came the final moment of hesitation. Revell later admitted that even standing there, with everything already committed, doubt crept in. Not panic, not regret, something quieter and more dangerous. The thought that once the ball was released, there would be no narrative left to edit. No reframing, no lesson, just the outcome. The dealer asked for confirmation. Red. All of it. No split, no insurance, no hedge, no cleverness, just red. The chips were pushed forward. The dealer spun the wheel. The ball clicked and bounced, hopping from pocket to pocket, doing what roulette balls have always done, mocking the human need for certainty. This is the part that gets glossed over in retelling, the spin itself, because it doesn't last long in real time. Maybe 15 seconds, maybe less, but psychologically it stretches into something vast. Revell later described it as surreal, like watching someone else's life play out. His parents stood nearby. The crowd leaned in. You can hear it in the footage, the intake of breath, the strange half-silence casinos only ever have when something rare is happening. And then the ball dropped, red, just like that. The table erupted, people cheered, some laughed, others just stared, stunned by its simplicity. Cameras rushed forward, the dealer confirmed the result. The chips were doubled. In one spin, Ashley Revell went from having nothing left to having $270,000, twice his life savings, earned in seconds. And this is where most versions of the story end. A neat arc, risk everything, win big, walk away smiling. But that version misses the real tension. Because winning doesn't resolve fear, it just changes its shape. Revell didn't collapse in joy, he didn't scream, he didn't fall to his knees. He smiled, hugged his parents, and then something very telling happened. He walked away, immediately. He cashed out and left the casino. No victory lap, no pressing his luck, no attempt to turn it into millions. That decision is more critical than the bet itself, because it reveals the truth behind the stunt. This was never about becoming rich through gambling. If it were, he would have stayed. He would have doubled down. He would have chased the feeling. Instead, he did the one thing casinos hate most. He stopped. In interviews afterwards, Revell said something that most people overlook. He said the relief wasn't about winning the money. It was about the ending of uncertainty, about finally knowing. For weeks, maybe months, he had lived inside a question mark. What if it works? What if it doesn't? What if I ruin everything? What if this is the moment my life changes? The spin answered all of it in one brutal, beautiful second. But here's the deeper layer. Even if the ball had landed on black, the story wouldn't have been meaningless. It would have been devastating, yes, but it would still have been complete. That's the uncomfortable truth people don't like to admit. Some humans would rather face a catastrophic ending than live indefinitely in quiet dissatisfaction. Revell himself later acknowledged this. He said that if he had lost, he would have accepted it. Not because he wanted to lose, but because he had already decided that the not knowing was worse. That's the real danger of the bet. Not the money, the willingness to burn the bridge behind you so that you can't retreat into comfort. And that's where the next section takes us. What happened after the cameras stopped rolling? Where did the money actually go? How his life unfolded, and why this story is not just a blueprint, but a mirror. When the casino floor quietened down and the crowd drifted back to their tables, Ashley Revell's story didn't end there. It just became less cinematic. And that's where the real lesson lies. After cashing out his winnings, Revell didn't stay in Las Vegas to celebrate. He didn't start playing the high roller. He didn't become a professional gambler. In fact, he did something far more revealing. He went home. Within months, the money from the roulette table was used not for indulgence but for investment. Revell used the winnings as seed capital to start a business. Reports at the time confirmed that he launched an online poker company, operating during the early boom years of digital gambling. In other words, he converted chaos into structure. That detail matters, because reckless people don't do that. People who are running towards something do. The roulette spin wasn't the destination, it was the ignition. Over time, Revell largely stepped away from the public eye. No endless interviews, no motivational speaking circuit, no attempt to become a symbol. The story followed him, but he didn't chase it. And that restraint is exactly why the story still works. Because this was never about fame. It was about resolution. Most people misunderstand risk. They think it's about money, about numbers on a screen, about winning or losing. But the real risk is psychological. Real risk is choosing an outcome over limbo. Most lives are lived in permanent postponement. People don't hate their lives enough to leave them, but they don't love them enough to commit to them either, so they hover. They wait. They tell themselves one-day stories. One day I'll start, one day I'll change, one day I'll know. Revell didn't want to hover. That's the uncomfortable part of this story. The part that makes people uneasy rather than inspired. Because his bet forces a question most people avoid. What would you do if you couldn't delay anymore? If the answer had to arrive today, not next year, not after one more paycheck, not after one more excuse? The casino didn't give Revell courage. He arrived with it. The wheel just exposed it, and this is where the legacy code perspective comes in. This is not a gambling story. It's a story about commitment without a safety net. Most people want a transformation with a receipt and a refund policy. They want guarantees before they move. They want proof before belief. But history shows something else. The people who change their lives rarely wait for certainty. They act, then grow into the version of themselves capable of carrying the outcome. That doesn't mean betting your savings on roulette. It means understanding what the roulette represented. Finality, a line you can't uncross. A moment where the old identity has nowhere left to hide. For Revell, the money mattered, but the decision mattered more. The act of choosing an ending over endless anticipation. And here's the twist that most articles never mention. Statistically, his odds were terrible. Roulette is engineered for the house to win. Even a red bet on an American roulette wheel carries a house edge due to the 0 and 0-0. Rationally, this was a bad decision, and yet, symbolically, it was a perfect one. Because it clarified something most people never clarify in an entire lifetime. He discovered that he would rather face consequences than regret. That he would rather live with the results of a bold decision than slowly suffocate under safe ones. That's legacy. Not the money, not the spin, not the applause. Legacy is the moment you decide who you are, even if the world doesn't agree, and even if the outcome scares you. Ashley Revell didn't become famous because he won. He became unforgettable because of the decision he made. And that's the mirror this story holds up to anyone watching, reading, or listening. Where are you still hovering? Where are you waiting for permission that will never come? And what would change if you decided that knowing, even if it hurts, is better than wondering forever? That's the most dangerous bet of all. If this story made you uncomfortable, that's a good sign. It means something in you recognized the moment, the edge, the hesitation, the quiet question you keep postponing. You don't need a casino, you don't need a roulette wheel, but you do need to make a decision. If this resonated with you, leave a comment below and share the one area of your life where you've been hovering over instead of choosing. Writing it down is often the first real commitment, so write it below. And if you want more stories that challenge the safe narrative, expose the invisible rules, and help you build your own version of legacy, subscribe to the Legacy Code and stick with us. Because the most dangerous bet isn't about risking everything. It's about never choosing at all.